The phone rang in David Mamets' office one quiet afternoon. On the other end, a voice he knew instantly. This is the best goddamn script I've read in 10 years. Don't change a word. And with that, Paul Newman hung up. No notes, no small talk, just those 12 words. It was those 12 words that would set the verdict in motion. It was the early 1980s, and Paul Newman was in a strange place. He was still a giant, a box office name, an Oscar nominee, and still one of the most recognisable faces on the planet. His recent films hadn't been making any waves. All the scripts he was being sent felt safe and recycled. He was looking for something weighty, something he could really sink his teeth into. Meanwhile, David Mamets was a rising playwright, known for sharp, unsentimental dialogue. He'd written a courtroom drama unlike anything the studios had ever seen. No soaring speeches, no clear-cut heroes, just a broken down man seeking redemption in a world that had already written him off. The script was bleak, blunt and honest. Too honest for some. It had landed on Newman's desk and he read it overnight. The script hit him hard. The next day he called Mamets. Don't change a word. The screenplay followed Frank Galvin, an alcoholic lawyer taking on a medical malpractice case that no one else wanted. He was broke, alone and barely hanging on. The executives wanted Galvin to be more sympathetic. They wanted more hope, a cleaner win, and maybe even a love story with a happy ending. But Mamets refused to soften the script and Newman backed him. And then Sydney Lumet signed on to direct. Lumet, known for Dog Day Afternoon and 12 Angry Men, could see what they were trying to do here. He called Mamets' script surgical, every cut and every pause deliberate. But still the pressure kept coming. One executive wanted to give Galvin a huge redemption speech in his final courtroom scene, but Newman was having none of it. We have something rare here, he said. If we sand off the rough edges, we lose the whole goddamn thing. On set, Newman was relentless. Not about ego, but about rhythm. He didn't want to sound like an actor just delivering lines. He wanted to speak like a man who was trying to keep his dignity intact while his world was simultaneously falling apart. Newman would run scenes over and over and over again, not to polish the emotion, but to find the exact cadence that Mamets had written. Mamets would later go on to say that Newman was the only actor he had ever worked with who cared more about the rhythm of the lines than his own image on the screen. When it came time to shoot the climactic courtroom scene, Paul Newman asked for a moment. Newman stood quietly over by the window, not rehearsing, just sinking into the weight of Frank Galvin's failure and fight. When the cameras rolled, Newman delivered the speech in a trembling, almost whispering voice. There was no music, no flashy edits, just the raw emotion of a man trying one last time to do the right thing. When Lumet called cut, nobody on set moved. They just sat there in silence, processing what they just witnessed. When the verdict premiered in 1982, the critics were stunned. The audiences were quieter, leaning in, absorbing every pause and every silence that Mamets had refused to fill. For his role as Frank Galvin, Newman was nominated for his 6th Academy Award. Mamets was nominated for Best Screenplay and Lumet for Best Directing. Woo! None of them ended up winning, but they didn't have to. For Mamets, that phone call from Newman, that definitive sentence, meant that his screenplay had been protected and would survive to be filmed intact. After the verdict, Paul Newman's career entered a phase that was defined more by quality than by quantity. He finally won his first Academy Award a few years later for The Colour of Money, a kind of sequel to The Hustler, directed by Martin Scorsese. In his later years, the roles might have slowed down, but his impact didn't. Newman spent the rest of his life balancing between carefully chosen roles, his car racing, his charity work, and his food company, Newman's Own, which has gone on to raise over $500 million for good causes. Yay! Meanwhile, David Mamet was becoming one of the most influential writers of his generation. He stormed back to the theatre with Oleana, Speed the Plough, and Glengarry Glen Ross, a play that would later go on to be made into a film with one of the greatest casts ever assembled.
Yeah!
He would also return to screenwriting with films Hoffa, Wag the Dog, and The Untouchables. Films that shared the same sharp edge and moral ambiguity that had defined The Verdict. As for working together again, they never did. There was no second film, no reunion, but it didn't need one. That one collaboration had given them both something rare. A film that said exactly what it needed to without any compromise. And that, in its own way, might be the most appropriate Newman-Mamet ending possible. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the film The Verdict. David Mamet, Paul Newman, and of course Sydney Lumet. And of course, if you'd like to see more content like this, you know the drill. Hit the like, the follow, the subscribe, even share the video with a friend. It all really helps. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, keep watching movies.